Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Savitas of the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBD Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya Stotas of the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Guru Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sekaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Garanga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 14, Text 6. Yayotana pada putro. Yayotana pada putro. Munina Gita Yarbaka. Munina Gita Yarbaka. Mrityo Kritvaiva Mordhyangrim. Mrityo Kritvaiva Mordhyangrim. Aruroha Harer Padam. Aruroha Harer Padam. Yayotana Padaputro. Munina Gita Yarbaka. Mrityo Kritvaiva Mordhyangrim. Aruroha Harer Padam. Yayotana pada putro. Vaishnavis. Yaya, by which? Uttanapada, O King Uttanapada. Putraha, son. Munina, by the sage. Okay. Gitaya, being son. Arbaka, a child. Mrityo, of death. Kritva, placing. Eva, certainly. Mordni, on the head. Angrim, feet. Aruroha, ascended. Hare, of the personality of Godhead. Padam, to the abode. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. By hearing these topics from the sage, Narada, the son of King Uttanapada, Dhruva, was enlightened regarding the personality of Godhead, and he ascended to the abode of the Lord, placing his feet over the head of death. Purport. While quitting his body, Maharaj Dhruva, the son of King Uttanapada, was attended by personalities like Sunanda and others, who received him in the kingdom of God. He left this world at an early age as a young boy, although he had attained the throne of his father and had several children of his own. Because he was due to quit this world, death was awaiting for him. He did not care for death, however, and even with his present body, he boarded a spiritual airplane and went directly to the planet of Vishnu because of his association with the great sage Narada, who had spoken to him the narration of the pastimes of the Lord. Om Agana Timanam Dasya Janan Jana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, in preparation for this class, I, of course, read the purport, and I had a little difficulty making sense of the second sentence where it says, he left this world at an early age as a young boy. Although he had attained the throne of his father, he had several children of his own. So he left this world at an early age. Well, this is that pastime where Dhruva Maharaj took place in the Satya Yuga. So people in the Satya Yuga lived for 100,000 years. Dhruva Maharaj, when he was just like 4 or 5 years old, was performing those austerities, and after a short time, it didn't take him long, he actually got darshan of Lord Vishnu or Lord Narayan. And because he had that desire to have a kingdom greater than the kingdom of his father or his grandfather or his great-grandfather, he got the benediction that he would rule the pole star, right, for 36,000 years. So he at least was around for 36,000 years. Now, perhaps by Satya Yuga standards, that's an early age. So that kind of makes sense. But he says here, as a young boy, he left this world at an early age as a young boy. So I don't know if he still can be considered a young boy at 36,000 years old. Even if you're supposed to live for 100,000 years, it's like 1/3 of your life. So our lifespan is 100 years. So when you're 33 here, you're not still considered a young boy. So anyway, so I brought this to the attention of Archita, and he also agreed that it didn't make sense. So I sent an email to Dravida and asked him to have a look at it. So from this we can understand that sometimes, you need editors. There's a lot of politics, well, not politics, there's a lot of, talk these days about, complaints about the books were over-edited. Okay, maybe, but you definitely need editors. Here's a perfect example of it. I joined in 73, so the 4th canto wasn't out yet. Prabhupada might have already completed it, but they might not. So it's at least 50 years old. And after 50 years, we're still finding some things in the books that don't make perfect sense. So you definitely need editors. So have mercy on the editors. So now, as far as the subject matter goes, so we're hearing about the pastime of Lord Varaha, and we heard about how the demigods and Lord Brahma were aware that the earth fell out of its orbit and sunk into the Garbhodak Ocean, which is, it's a really big ocean. You can't compare it to the oceans of this planet. The bottom half of the universe has a diameter of 4 billion miles. It's sort of like an egg shape, so it's not a perfect ball. It's not a perfect sphere. But the Garbhodak Ocean is about 1 billion miles deep. So the Earth planet fell down into the Garbhodak Ocean, and so Varaha had to come and rescue it. And we hear about how Varaha came out of the nose of Lord Brahma, and initially he was just teeny, and then he very rapidly expanded into some huge form. And it must have been a pretty huge form. You need to be a pretty huge form to be able to go down into 1 billion miles deep into an ocean, and with your tusks bring out a planet. So he expanded into a pretty large form, did that, and then he rested the earth on the water there, and he fought with Hiranyanaksha. So it's pretty inconceivable stuff, in this pastime, and just in general, in Krishna consciousness, one thing after another, we're confronted with so many, descriptions and things that are inconceivable. How is it that a little, something comes out of Lord Brahma's nose and it expands to that huge size? How is it that Lord Brahma has 4 heads? And one thing, it's just like one inconceivable thing after another. So as devotees, how do you deal with that? Well, in the Padma Purana it's stated, Atak Shri Krishna Nama Adi Nabhaved Grayam Indriye Sevan Mukha Hijivado Swayam Eva Sparati, that Krishna can't be understood. And when I say Krishna, I'm sure this is meant to include Krishna, his pastimes, his paraphernalia, his philosophy. Everything about Krishna can't be understood with the blunt material senses. Sevan Mukha Jivado, it's understood when you start engaging in devotional service, beginning with your tongue, which is, the 2 functions of the tasting and vibrating, chanting Hare Krishna, chanting the mantras from the Vedic literatures, and taking prashadam. So he's understood by devotional service, beginning with the tongue. Sevan Mukha Jivado Svayam Eva Sparatiyada, which means he's revealed to somebody who engages in devotional service, beginning with their tongue. Okay? And in the Bhagavad Gita, it explains, there's a verse in the 6th chapter, I think it's text 20 approximately, Sukam adyantikam yatad buddhigrayam atindriya, that, same thing. Krishna, this philosophy is understood by transcendental senses. Sukam adyantikam yatad buddhigrayam atindriya. To properly understand this philosophy, this philosophy is properly understood by somebody who's in samadhi, somebody who's transcended, whose consciousness has transcended the 3 modes of material nature. That's when that's when you're capable of properly understanding this philosophy. Until that time, you have conviction. It's not black and white either. And it's good, because I'm mentioning this because sometimes as devotees, we talk about these pastimes, and we talk, very lightly. They say, oh yeah, Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill or expanded into 16,000 forms. And we talk about it as if, just very matter-of-factly, and that's good in one sense. It's good that we're comfortable. We've accepted the parampara. We're not like, wait a second, how's that possible? How's that? No, we're accepting the parampara. So if that's what's stated by the books and the spiritual masters, sure, we accept it. But at the same time, we should be honest about our level of realization. Okay? It's okay to talk about these pastimes in a very casual sort of a way, but simultaneously we should be at least honest initially with ourselves. Well, how much have I actually realized that? It's good that I'm accepting it because it's in parampara, but how much have I actually realized it? That's a point to be considered. And now another point is, okay, so what is our justification for presenting this type of information to the general public? Because here I've just, at least to my satisfaction, established that it's pretty inconceivable stuff, and even you accept it because it's, you know, coming from parampara like that, still it's, you know, you haven't realized it. So what's our justification presenting to the public? Well, a devotee would answer that question. In circles of devotees, we say, well, we're instructed to, you know, share this information, present this information to the general public. And a response from an outsider would be, well, that's just circular logic. You can't justify what I'm asking you to justify by, you know, you can't justify your philosophy by taking somebody in the philosophy, Krishna or your spiritual master, and using their authority to justify what I'm asking you to justify. You can't justify something by the authority of the thing I'm asking you to justify. So they would say that's circular logic. And oh, okay, fair enough. It works for us, but it wouldn't work for them. But okay, what I could say should work for them is this. Okay. Yeah. Now, just last night, I was listening to a lecture, and Prabhupada said, got my notes in front of me here, Prabhupada said that he referred to Albert Einstein as the greatest scientist, which was interesting. So, but in scientific circles, people who, you know, move in those circles, they know that another scientist who's equally as, maybe not equally as famous, but whose contribution is at least equally as valued, is a scientist named Max Planck. Albert Einstein was most famous for the theory of, you know, relativity, right? Everybody's heard of that. And Max Planck, he's considered the father of quantum mechanics. See, relativity deals with material energy at a very large scale. Classic mechanics by Newton deals with it in, you know, the middle range, and quantum mechanics deals with things on a very small scale. Okay, so, you know, to get a picture of reality, you need all the theories kind of, they're still working on just putting them all together and seeing how trying to explain how they do all work together. But anyway, the reason I mention it is because Prabhupada referred to Albert Einstein as a great scientist. This man, Max Planck, among scientists is considered, you know, on that same level. People regard science as their authority. You know, science is like, what's the word? You know, like a god almost. You know, I mean, we have so many things, you know, in our lives as a result of science. This microphone, this book, everything. You know, it's come about as a result of, like, you know, the science, the process of science. Material advancement is made. So people have a lot of, they put science on a real pedestal. They give a lot of importance to science. Okay, good. That's okay. So Max Planck, the man who is, as I said, among scientists, is considered an equal to Albert Einstein, who Prabhupada himself referred to as the greatest scientist. One of his most famous statements is, he said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as a derivative of consciousness. You can't get behind consciousness." That's what he said. So this is a man who's like, you know, a scientist on par with Albert Einstein, and he's saying something which is like our philosophy. You know, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as a derivative of consciousness. It's like something right out of the third canto of the, you know, the Bhagavatam here, which we'll be coming to probably in another few weeks' time. Right? We're going to hear that, practically that exact statement from you know, the translations and the purports of the Bhagavatam. You can't get behind consciousness. So let's analyze that last phrase. You can't get behind, to say you can't get behind something means that there's nothing that comes before it. That's what that means to me. You can't get behind consciousness means nothing comes before consciousness. That means consciousness is the origin of everything. Okay? Consciousness is the origin of everything. Its meanings, another way of saying it, it's the ultimate basis of reality. That's what he's saying. Okay? Once again, that's exactly our philosophy. Okay, so now say if we were to ask, well, okay, great, thank you. What more can you tell us about it? See? Now, once again, this is how I present, this is my way of justifying our philosophy, our practicing it and presenting it to other people, to an ordinary person. Okay, so what more can you tell us about consciousness? We agree with you. Consciousness is the ultimate basis of reality. What more can you tell us about it? Well, to the best, I haven't read any books by Max Planck or Albert Einstein. I'm really, I haven't studied these things in depth, but I've just picked up the things the statements that they've made that tend to support our worldview, which I've heard through the Karma Prabhu, Sariputta Prabhu, like that, through, other devotees. But from what I can understand, not much more. If I were to ask Max Planck, with all due respect, what more can you tell me, about this, how consciousness is the ultimate basis of reality? I'm not aware of a lot more information that they would present to us. But now, if I were to ask that same question to the Srimad Bhagavatam, what can you tell me about the ultimate consciousness being the ultimate basis of reality? I would get a great answer. From Sutta Goswami, I'd get the answer, Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti subjite. That's from the first canto, chapter 2, text 11. Sutta Goswami, in answering the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya, they asked him, could you please tell us, you're a very learned transcendentalist elder, you have great realization, tell us what you consider to be the most important truths. And that was one of the things he said to me. He said a bunch of things, but that was one of them. He said that, let me read the translation so I don't mess it up. I want to get it exactly right. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So Vedanti means they say, Tat means that, Tattva Vida, the learned souls. In other words, the learned transcendentalists, what they're saying about the ultimate basis of reality, consciousness, is that it has three features. One is Brahman, one is Paramatma, and one is Bhagavan. And in the purport, Prabhupada explains something very interesting about this. He says, in the relative world, the knower is different from the known. But in the absolute truth, both the knower and the known are one and the same. In the relative world, the knower is living spirit or superior energy, whereas the known is inert matter or inferior energy. Therefore, there is duality of inferior and superior energy, whereas in the absolute realm, both the knower and the known are the same superior energy. Interesting. So that's something, and obviously there's a lot more. And basically, the Bhagavad Gita is just almost like you could say it's like a handbook of how to go to higher consciousness. Right? Once again, we were saying, okay, we agree with Max Planck, consciousness is the ultimate basis of reality, like that. We want to know more about it. Where do we go to know more about it? Well, why neglect? Why ignore what we got? The Bhagavad, the Vedic literatures and the spiritual masters. We have like a wealth, a treasure chest of information, treasure chest of knowledge. The Bhagavad Gita is just all about, it's talking about Brahman. There's a ton about Brahman realization. There's a ton about Paramatma, understanding the Paramatma. And there's a ton about Bhagavan. Krishna's, telling how to understand him. Bhakti Mama, Vijanati, etc. So it's just all there, right there in the Bhagavad Gita. And it would be very foolish to not give that some serious consideration. Somebody might say, well, it's just what you guys say. Well, yes and no. I mean, here's something interesting. Back in 1975, Prabhupada was in Atlanta, and he had this meeting with all the book distributors, and famous conversation. So after they kind of finished talking about book distribution, Satsvarup Maharaj introduced this one person, this one boy to Srila Prabhupada. His name was Doug. And it just so happened that Doug was a personal secretary from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who Prabhupada used to call Maharshi. Okay? And so they asked him, how is it that you joined and everything? So this boy says, Satsu, in introducing me, says he traveled all over with him, and one day he was a very good student, and one day Maharishi, Satsu said, if you really want to know the highest truth, it's Krishna consciousness. And then he left, and he joined our team, he joined our temple. And then, so the devotee said to Prabhupada, so Prabhupada said, how did he know that? And the devotee said, well, he must have read your book, Srila Prabhupada. How else could he know that, you know? And so it's possible. And this fellow, he elaborated upon that a little later in the conversation. He was saying that they were always asking him, you know, about that, questions about who's God, who's Krishna, you know, what's the highest truth, and he was always trying to evade. Finally, one day he kind of told them, he said, actually, Krishna consciousness is the highest consciousness. I thought that was pretty far out, you know. Even the competition is acknowledging that, well, you know, actually what you guys is the topmost thing. So actually, I never met this devotee, Doug, but I was in Australia in the late 70s and early 80s, and there was about a half a dozen of his followers there who had also defected from that group and became devotees in the Krishna conscious movement. Same thing. They heard about that and they just said, okay, well, this is the Krishna conscious, the highest conscious, I'm going there. So that was interesting. So you have the tradition itself is, you know, is talking about consciousness and you know, what's the importance of it and giving information. You have science. You have the competition is saying things, you know, encouraging, supporting Krishna consciousness. Here's another interesting example. And you have examples. You have examples in our tradition of people in higher consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada would have to be as usual, the greatest example of this. On one occasion, he was on this television show, the Alan Burke Show. So Alan Burke was a very popular talk show host. This is back in the late 60s. And he was famous for smelling out phonies. You know, if somebody was, people would go on his show because he was very popular, and it meant like if you get on his show, it's a lot of publicity. But at the same time, they knew there was a risk because, you know, Alan Burke would kind of study up on the person, and he would right there on the, you know, there wasn't rehearsed, it was live. So right there on the show, live, he'd ask him some very pointed questions, and sometimes these people had to squirm, and they wish they hadn't come on the show. It was kind of embarrassing. But so Prabhupada went. You know, devotees told him, Prabhupada, I don't think you should go on that show. It could be, you know, could backfire on us. It could really come out not good. Prabhupada said, no. We have nothing to hide, you know. Prabhupada went. And Alan Burke, when he introduced him, he said, here is a real Swami. From beginning to end of the whole interview, he was like on his best behavior. That's how he introduced Prabhupada. He said, this is A.C. Buck. Here is a real Swami. And then he asked some questions, and Prabhupada just preached very directly. And then after that, people would call in with questions. You know, so what happened was during that session, that when people would call in with questions, there was one person from another religion was really trying to, you know, kind of give Prabhupada a hard time. Prabhupada was in his presentation, he was making the point that birth, death, old age, disease, and death, these are, you know, undesirable things. Let me see, just find the exact quote here if I can. Oh, I didn't print that out. These are very undesirable things. So, you know, so at one point Alan Burke interrupted because he could see this person was just trying to give Prabhupada a hard time. And he said, excuse me, let's not get out of hand. These things are miserable, you know, and he just supported Prabhupada. Right, you know, live in front of the whole audience like that. So I thought that was pretty significant, at least for me, because I used to watch that show, and you know, I knew how popular it was and everything. That a person like that was supporting Prabhupada was pretty far out. So, okay, then somebody could ask the question, okay, well, sure, yeah, you guys got a lot of information, and you got some examples of people who seem to, you know, be examples of higher consciousness, but what about for you? Does it work? I mean, you're practicing Krishna consciousness. Does it work? Okay, worked for Prabhupada, but he's special. I mean, that's Prabhupada. He came from India, he came from this tradition. He's a pure devotee. But what about for the average Tom, Dick, and Harry? Does it work? Krishna consciousness. Well, it does. It works. I experienced it working this morning. To be honest with you, I was chanting my japa at home, and I'm just going to tell you the exact experience, not trying to embellish it or play it down. Okay. I was chanting at home, and I got here a little bit late because my wife rang me just at the beginning of Mangal Arati, so I had to spend the first 15 minutes talking to her on the phone. But I got here from Mangal Arati, and I came in, paid my obeisances, squatted down because I'm having problems with my back, and I started chanting, joined in the kirtan, and immediately I was experiencing a higher taste. I was just chanting the same Hare Krishna mantra as I was chanting back over there, but here I was. I came in the temple room in front of the deities with all the devotees, and Satyajula was leading a nice kirtan, and I started relishing the transcendental sound vibration. I wasn't like in ecstasy, like tears weren't pouring from my eyes and my hairs weren't standing on end or anything like that, but definitely I was experiencing a taste for the chanting. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, okay, this is proof, this is evidence. Why would I be experiencing this unless there was something special about this chanting? How could I be experiencing a higher taste? So yeah, it does work. It does work. And we have to, we have to strive to experience a higher taste. And during the times when we're not experiencing a higher taste, we have to remind ourselves that there is such a thing as a higher taste, and keep, striving for it. And that's what association is all about. We have to encourage each other. Because Maya has two potencies. One is Avanaratmika Shakti, and another is Prapshikatmika Shakti, the covering and the throwing potency. See? So basically Maya's job is to make sure that, you don't get pure devotional service unless you're really squeaky clean. You got to be like a really genuine, sincere, surrendered devotee, and then Maya, Prabhupada said on one occasion, Maya pays her obeisances and backs off. It's like Krishna calling off the dogs, so to speak. But until that time, Maya tests, you see. So you could be experiencing a higher taste, and then, you could go to prasadam and overeat, and then you're back in illusion again. With the speak of a higher taste, you're in total anxiety. So it's not like a guaranteed thing. So that's why we have to remind ourselves, we have to encourage each other to kind of keep striving for that higher taste. And that's, as I said, that's the function of association, and we shouldn't be like donkeys. A donkey, he carries a big load on his back, and just and what motivates the donkey is he's going after the carrot on the stick in front of him, or sometimes it's just a bunch of grass. And Prabhupada would explain that he doesn't stop to think. He doesn't stop to think that, wait a second, why do I got to pull this, big load just to get that grass that's dangling in front of my face? I could just refuse to carry this, and the guys will let me go because I'm not doing any work, and I can get that same grass on either side of the road, any place. Why do I have to pull this load to get that? So the materialists are like that. They're not thinking that material sense gratification is just easily available. You don't have to work so hard for it. They just accept, without question, they just accept, I got to work hard for material sense gratification. And that's a donkey. So we shouldn't be like that. But the thing is this, if we're not, because we're Anandamaya Bhasat, we want pleasure. We're driven, we want pleasure. So if we're not going for the higher taste, if we're not experiencing a higher taste, if we're not thinking, believing that there is a higher taste, we're going to, by default, you become a donkey. You see, by default, you become a donkey. Because Prabhupada says in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatu tishtati karmakrit karyatehi avasha karma sarva prakriti jagana, that all men are forced to act helplessly according to the modes of material nature. No one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. And Prabhupada says in the purport that unless one is engaged in the good work of Krishna consciousness, striving for the higher taste, then one will be engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. See? So in other words, if you're not trying to make advancement in Krishna consciousness, then automatically we're going to be engaged in occupations dictated by the illusory energy. You know, you're going to be engaged in donkey consciousness. So better to try to be a devotee. And somebody might say in response to that, well, you know what, okay, but it's hard. It's hard to get a higher taste. You really have to struggle so much, and I'll just be satisfied being a donkey. No, you won't. You won't. You won't be satisfied being, even if you're willing to accept, I'll just be a donkey. But you won't be satisfied being a donkey. And the reason for that is explained by Krishna in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Avritam jnanam etena, jnanino nichavarina, kamarupena kuntaya, duspurain analena cha. That this material desire, lust for material enjoyment of all different varieties, it's never satisfied. It burns like fire. It's never satisfied. See? So even if you're thinking, I'll be satisfied, just be a donkey, no, you won't. You won't be satisfied to be a donkey. So it's no comparison. Like the materialists, they're always desiring more money, more sex, and more prestige. That's material consciousness. I want more money, more sex, and more prestige. And as much as you get, it's never enough. Okay? Whereas a devotee in Krishna consciousness is Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, joyful, Nasochati Akankshati. Not hankering for anything, and not lamenting, not hankering for anything he doesn't have, and not lamenting for anything he, what did I say? He's not hankering for anything he doesn't have, and he's not lamenting for anything he's lost. Where's the comparison? Where's the comparison? I mean, but you got to be able to step back and see the donkey consciousness for what it's worth, which is very little. When you're chanting and you're experiencing a higher taste, I mean, what material opulence do you need? Actually, Krishna consciousness teaches you how to, the material consciousness teaches you how to be dissatisfied no matter what. And from Krishna consciousness, we learn how to be satisfied in practically any situation. You know, Prabhupada said all a devotee wants is just a little service, chanting. He's satisfied to be chanting, and a little service and a little prasadam. You know, you just need the basic necessities of life, and beyond that, we're okay because of the happiness we're experiencing by engaging in devotional service. So yeah, we really have to be thoughtful. We shouldn't be like another example of the materialists is like they're like the lemmings. The lemmings, probably some of you know, the lemmings are like a little rodent kind of an animal, and they have this habit of, at a certain time of the year, they'll running in a big group, and they just run off a cliff. And they just, you know, run off a cliff and they're diving into the water, and they die. It's not that they're suicidal, it's the proper explanation for that, at least according to the scientists, is that they're driven by strong biological urges. Some species of lemmings may migrate in large groups when population density becomes too great. See, so in other words, they experience these strong biological urges, and that's why they behave like that. They'll run right off. And it's not like no one lemming will stop and go, hey, wait a second. I don't want to do that. That looks like a pretty deep drop there, pretty high drop, and I don't know if I'm going to survive. No, they won't. They're overwhelmed by these strong biological urges, and they just do it. They just follow, and all of them just run off the cliff, and if it's an ocean or something like that, they just die. They just drown because they can't swim they can swim, but they can't swim that well. So we shouldn't be like lemmings. In other words, we shouldn't be, well, you know, here we are. I mean, you know, okay, you said a lot of good things, but I mean, the bottom line is like a few Hare Krishnas, and there's millions of people out there that aren't devotees, and they're doing okay. Come on, you know, they're not dropping dead. They're not getting hit by a lightning bolt. I mean, they're living there. No, they're like the lemmings. They're the lemmings, and we shouldn't be, you know, kind of hypnotized into thinking, you know, yeah, well, everybody else is doing like this. Let me do like this. That's a very powerful subconscious psychological motivation. That's everybody else is doing like this. I guess this is what you do with your human form of life. No, we don't want to be like lemmings. We want to. You got to. As Prabhupada said, devotees or Brahmins are independently thoughtful. You know, you got to think. You got to step back and look at life and what's going on, and you know, don't get sucked in by that. Okay, and finally, last point is, so what about though, okay, what if I accept everything up to this point, but what about the controversial statements of Srila Prabhupada? That's something, that's the game, that's a deal breaker, right? The controversial statements of Srila Prabhupada. Well, yesterday, Deva Vrata rang me up, and he had an interesting experience. He's at the University of Montana in Missoula, Montana. So one young lady came and she took a big stack of books and gave a nice donation, and she walked away very happy. And then she came back a couple hours later and she said, hey, you know, it's favorable, nice mood. She came back and said, hey, you know, because she knew nothing about Krishna consciousness prior to meeting him. So she walked away and she noticed all these books are by the same author. So she got on a phone and she Googled A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And she saw, oh, here's a Wikipedia article. So she started reading the Wikipedia article, which unfortunately was not written by somebody who is a good devotee in good standing and is favorable to Krishna consciousness. It had a lot of, a big section about all these controversial things Prabhupada said about blacks, women, Jews, homosexuals, those four categories. And so she came back and said, hey, what about this? You know, what do I make of this? And Deva Vrata rang me to ask, you know, he obviously spoke to her and said something, and she kind of went away sort of happy, which was good. And he was asking me, how would you deal with that situation? At first I thought, whoa, I don't know. That's a pretty difficult situation. But I came up with what I think is a good answer. Prabhupada was, you know, on the elevated transcendentalist, okay? He criticized all materialistic behavior. He criticized materialistic behavior of materialistic nature of women, of black people, of Jews, of homosexuals. He criticized Mayavadi sannyasis. He criticized, you know, speculative scientists. He criticized ambitious politicians. Who else? I mean, you know, huh? Philosophy. Yeah, Prabhupada criticized everything. What? Feminism, right. He criticized all materialistic behavior and, you know, philosophy. So, and he wasn't partial. It wasn't like he was picking on one group and leaving it now. But in the very next second after criticizing them, he's at the same time, he's welcoming and encouraging everybody to come into the Krishna consciousness movement. So, you know, it's kind of like, okay, you have to be able to appreciate this is somebody who's speaking from another place. He's not like one of us, a materialist, and he's not criticizing, you know, us on the material level. He's a spiritually elevated person, and he's just pointing out the defects in the materialistic consciousness and behavior of many, 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 many different groups. But at the same time, he's not condemning Prabhupada. His final point, Prabhupada was the perfect example of that phrase in the Bible, hate the sin, not the sinner. That's exactly what Prabhupada was doing, I believe. And you know, that's my understanding of those controversial statements. He's hating the sin. You know, he's pointing out a materialistic defect in, you know, in this group, that group, and whatever. But he's loving because he's inviting and encouraging people to come into Krishna consciousness. He's loving the sinner, the spirit soul. So that if that happened to me out on Sankirtan, this is my first shot at it, but that would be the way I would try to respond to that sort of you know, somebody coming forward to me with that sort of a problem. You know, what about the controversial statements of Prabhupada? I would say, yeah, that's my explanation. So that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Prema Sankirtan.
There is two questions. One is, I think Sariputta Prabhu, he said, and Varaha, Lord Varaha, he lived actually all Bhu Mandala, not just this one, so you can say something about that. Another one is, say something about that first.
Yeah, well, that's what Sariputta points out, that he quoted from some Purana or something like that, that it wasn't just the Earth planet that Varaha lifted from the Garbadak Ocean. He lifted the entire Bhumandala. And so, yeah, that statement's there.
Another one is, is explained how, in verse, how Dhruva, he went to spiritual world in his own body.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Is also example of Tukaram. Tukaram, a saint from South India. So my question is, how look like that, his body is made of like material elements in some sense, yeah. But in spiritual world, everybody has spiritual body, completely spiritual. They have different races, sort of city. So how look like then? There's some more explanation about it when he appeared there in that kind of body.
Well,
there is more information about it.
His material body got spiritualized, just like Prabhupada would give the example way back in early days. So you take an iron rod and you stick it in the fire, it becomes just like fire. And somebody might say, Prabhupada in the class he gave here in 1969 said, somebody might say, well, no, it's not fire. And then Prabhupada's response was, touch it. You stick the iron rod in the fire, it takes on the quality of the fire. And somebody might say, no, that's not an iron rod. That's not fire, that's just an iron rod. Prabhupada said, well, touch it. So for all practical purposes, it's like fire because it's got heated up in the fire. So in the same way, Dhruva Maharaj, or the Pandavas also, it's said that they went back to Godhead in their self-same bodies. So they were so fully engaged in devotional service, so fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness that their body was spiritualized. That's the best I could answer that question, yeah.
Just like you take an apple, you offer it to Krishna on the altar, you take it off the altar. It still looks like an apple, still smells like an apple, still tastes like an apple, but it's 100% spiritualized. So like that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example. Thank you. Rabindranath Prabhu.
Yeah, you mentioned how devotees accept the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam or the pastimes of Krishna, but do they realize it? So what do you mean by realization?
Well, I guess experience. Just like somebody might accept that the holy name of Krishna is non-different from Krishna, and that's good. We should accept that, and based upon that acceptance, we should chant it. But then that's different from, say, somebody who's chanting the holy name, and as I said, they're experiencing a higher taste, or really, experiencing a lot of different things as a result of the chanting. So that's realizing. Pratyakshavangamam damyam, it's good. The first thing is good. It's good to just accept it on the strength of the, philosophy, the parampara. But it's better if you do that, and in addition to that, as a result of accepting that and practicing it, you're actually having some experience of the transcendental nature of the holy name. So I think that when somebody advances, they'll have transcendental experience of all these different things that we're reading about in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It won't just be information for them. There's an experience that you enter into, just like there's an experience you enter into when you become free from the 10 offenses in chanting. It doesn't stay the same. It's not like forever you're just going to go Hare Krishna, and nothing is. No, as we say every morning, I say every morning. If one is free from the 10 offenses, he won't get the love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of this chanting. So in other words, if you become free from the 10 offenses, you will experience the love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of this chanting. It's not like there's no experience. So in the same way, when somebody becomes realized, there's an experience. It's not just, information.
So in other words, whether it's the holy name or Krishna's pastimes, realization means spiritual experience, in other words, you're saying.
That's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah, when you reach the stage of realization, there's an experience. You have more than just information. There's some experience that accompanies that. Yes.
There is one famous verse in the Bhagavatam that says, Bhaktir Paresha Nubhavo Viraktir Anyatra Chaisa Trikaikala. Three things. One, you can have a direct perception of the Lord, and then Srila Prabhupada gives the example about when you eat. What is the first thing? You feel nourished. And then later, also taste. And then virakta, you're detached from everything else. So the devotee start feeling that he's experiencing where actually you're not interested about any other thing of the material world. That is direct perception. Everyone can have that to the level that you commit yourself or surrender yourself to Krishna. Otherwise, Srila Rupa Goswami, Tunde Tandavini Ratim Vitanute, he's experiencing like he wants millions and millions of mouths, millions and millions of ears, and like that. But we don't have that. So he's just giving us a little hint.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Control Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
I think I missed something though. When you said something, I know we're spirit souls and not this body, but when you generalize and you mention black people, what did you mean? I mean, how was that?
Prabhupada criticized in Bhagavatam his statements, critical statements about the nature of black people. Have you ever come across them? Have you ever come across them in reading the Bhagavatam?
Yeah.
So there's critical statements about women. There's not in the Bhagavatam, but in conversations, there's critical statements about Jewish people. There's critical statements about homosexuals. So Prabhupada criticized any type of, based on Shastra, he would criticize the materialistic nature of a group of people. He would criticize the materialistic behavior of people. He would criticize materialistic mentality of the speculative philosophers or the scientists or the Mayavadi philosophers and all that. So Prabhupada criticized anything that was material. But at the same time, he understood that if he hated his sin, they're not pursued. He wasn't against black people.
No, I know.
He wasn't against women.
Oh, I
He
know.
wasn't against, I'm from Jewish background. He wasn't against Jews. He wasn't
Okay.
against homosexuals. He wasn't against,
Okay.
wasn't against scientists per se. He wasn't against, but he was against materialistic consciousness and materialistic behavior. So that's the point I was trying to make. You have to understand that Prabhupada was coming from a place of an elevated transcendentalist, speaking on the authority of the scriptures, and probably also in his own realization, also on the authority
Oh,
of the
yeah,
scriptures.
clear that. But I just don't understand why wasn't it just people? Why was it just black people? But I get it. I got it.
That was just a category.
I got it. I got it.
Is that okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Swami Nayana Pathagami Bhavatu Me Kripa Paravaraha Sajala Jaladashrin Ruchiro Ramavani Rama Sura Ramala Panke Rohamukha Surendraradhya Shruti Gana Shikha Gita Parichayo जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे सारूढो गच्छन् पथिमिलितभूदेव पटलै प्रादुर्भावम् प्रतिपदमुपाकर्ण्य सदयः दया सिन्धुर्बन्धो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे परब्रह्मापीडः कुवलयदलोत्फुल्लनयनो निवासी नीलाद्रौ निहित चरणो अनन्त शिरसि रसानन्दी राधा पुरालिङ्गनसुखो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे नवायाचेराजं न च कनकमाणिक्यविभवम् न याचेऽहं रम्यं सकलजनकाम्यां वरवधूं स सदा काले काले प्रमथपतिनागीश चरितो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे हर त्वं संसारं द्रुततरमसारं भूरपते हर त्वां पापानां भीततिमपराम्यादवपते ओहो दीने नाथे निहित चरणों निश्चितमदम् जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे 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 Jagannath Swami Nayana Pathagami Bhavatu me Jagannath Swami Nayana Pathagami Bhavatu me Jagannath Swami Nayana Pathagami Bhavatu me Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Va
भज भकत वत्सलति गौर हरि भज भकत वत्सलति गौर हरि भज भकत वत्सलति गौर हरि Shri Gaura Hari Sahi Dosa Vihari Shri Gaura Hari Sahi Dosa Vihari Nanda Jasamatir Kitahari Bhaja Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Bhaja Bhaja Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Bhaja Shri Gaura Hari Sahi Dosa Vihari Shri Gaura Hari Sahi Dosa Vihari Nanda Jasamatir Kitahari Bhaja Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Bhaja Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Dalahal Damodar Aishaya Khana Bhogam Mandire Vati Karaha Bhajana Bhaja Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Shri Gaura Hari Sahi Dosa Vihari Nanda Jasamatir Kitahari Bhaja Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Bhaja Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Shri Gaura Hari Sahi Dosa Vihari Shri Gaura Hari Sahi Dosa Vihari Nanda Jasamatir Kitahari Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Bhaja Bhakata Vasalati Gaura Hari Radhikara कयन विविध व्यञ्जन परमानन्दे कृष्ण करे न भजन भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि निसार बोले राजुरा साबली परम आनंद कृष्ण करे न भजन भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि श्री गौरहरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी नंदा जटा मते तीर्थहारी भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि श्री गौरहरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी श्री गौरहरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी नंद जटामते तीर्थहारी भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि श्री गौरहरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी श्री गौरहरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी नंद जटामते तीर्थहारी नंद जटामते तीर्थहारी भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि भज गोविंद गोविंद गोपाल भज गोविंद गोविंद गोपाल गिरिधारी गोपीनाथ नंद दुलाल गोविंद गोविंद गोपाल भज भज गोविंद गोविंद गोपाल भज भक्त वत्सल श्रीगौरहरि श्री गौरहरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी श्री गौरहरि सहि गोष्ठ बिहारी नंद जटामते तीर्थहारी भज भक्त Shiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chade Arati Ki Shobha Shiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chade Arati Ki Shobha Shiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chade Arati Ki Shobha Jannavi Tata Bhani Jaga Jana Mana Loma Jannavi Tata Bhani Jaga Jana Mana Loma Shiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chade Arati Ki Shobha Shiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chade Arati Ki Shobha Jannavi Tata Bhani Jaga Jana Mana Loma Jannavi Tata Bhani Jaga Jana Mana Loma Shiva Dakhine Nidhaika Vame Gadadhara Shiva Dakhine Nidhaika Vame Gadadhara Nikate Advaita Prabhu Shiva Bame Gadadhara Advaita Prabhu Shiva Satradhara Nikate Advaita Prabhu Shiva Satradhara Shiva Jaya Jaya Gaurachade Bharati ki Shobha Shiva Jaya Jaya Gaurachade Bharati ki Shobha Jaga jana mana loba jana bitata bhane jaga jana mana loba Vivabasi Akangoracha Ratna Singhasane Vivabasi Akangoracha Ratna Singhasane Bade Karatala Iba Sankho Bade Ganda Bade Karatala Jaya Jaya Gora Chande Arati Ki Shobha Shiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chande Arati Ki Shobha Vivabasi Atangora Cham Ratna Singhasane Vivabasi Atangora Cham Ratna Singhasane Arati Karne Brahma Hare Bhagane Arati Karne Brahma Hare Bhagane Shiva Shankha Bhaje Chanda Bhaje Bhaje Kadasala Shiva Shankha Bhaje Chanda Bhaje Bhaje Kadasala Shiva Shankha Bhaje Chanda Bhaje Bhaje Kadasala Madhura Medanga Bhaje Tumi Tera Chala Madhura Medanga Bhaje Tumi Tera Chala Shiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chande Arati Ki Shobha Shiva Jaya Jaya Gora Chande Arati Ki Shobha Vitata Bhane Jagadana Manadoma Viva Shankha Bhaje Ghanta Bhaje Bhaje Karatala Bhaje Ghanta Bhaje Bhaje Karatala Madhura Medanga Bhaje Tumi Tera Chala Madhura Medanga Bhaje mana mana